the Mims family, Mr. Ronnie Mims, Ms. Beverly Mims, and their daughter Olivia. And we also have Ms. Tracy Bynum. They're each going to come up and talk to you about their personal tragedies that they endure with the loss of their loved ones and family members.
My name is Ronnie Mims. This is my wife, Beverly. That's our beautiful daughter, Olivia. This was our family 15 months ago, before we lost our son. This is our first time publicly speaking about this, so we're probably going to struggle getting through this. I hope you'll be patient with us. We want to make it clear, we're telling our story, or we're telling Baker's story. The only way we know how to tell it. And I know we're going to be bragging a lot, and we're going to make him sound like the next coming of Jesus, probably. But it's the only way we know how to tell it, because that's how much we loved him. We also want to make it clear, our loss, we don't assume our loss is any greater than anyone else that's ever lost a child. It's a tragedy for everyone. And ours is no greater or no less. And certainly no less because of the way he died, because the way he died was not who he was.
I'm definitely not a speaker, so I'm probably going to be reading a lot, but they're my words. So, on March the 20th, 2013, a brilliant light went out. Our precious son Baker died of a heroin overdose. His death spread a cloud of sadness that encompassed not only our family, but all who knew him, and even those who didn't. Through so many who loved him, we were reminded of his caring, selfless, and loving spirit. We learned of the extraordinary number of lives that he touched, influenced, and inspired during his short 20 years. Baker opened his heart so freely to so many and brightened their days with his infectious smile. He did not judge. He had a gift of making people feel special and made them laugh. He had a huge heart, showing sensitivity and compassion to those around him. He was exceptionally bright and very handsome, but down to earth and humble. Baker was fiercely independent. He was who he was and not to be anybody else.
Our family moved to Vestavia Hills when Baker was 3 years old. Our daughter was just a baby. He spent his whole life in Vestavia. Graduated from Vestavia High School. We're a working middle-class family, very middle class. Our kids didn't have everything, but they had all they needed. We were fortunate in some ways. My wife's parents had a place on Lake Martin. We spent most summer weekends at Lake Martin. And our kids were very happy. They swam, they loved the water, loved boat rides, tubing, fishing. At nights at the lake, we didn't have cable, so we would play board games. And I think that was the thing they enjoyed most, was having the family time to just play games and laugh and have fun. And we say this, just so we were not rich people, not poor people. We didn't spend money on babysitters. If we did anything, we did it as a family. And that was from the beginning and pretty much till the end. It's always been doing things as a family. So they never, I guess, wanted to make it, the point was they never felt neglected. So it was, they knew we were always there, always involved in their life.
I want to tell you a little about Baker because some assume bright, good kids don't get into drugs. Growing up, Baker was an adorable little boy with energy to spare, with blonde hair, twinkling eyes, and a natural six-pack that the other little boys envied. He was a very happy, talkative, inquisitive young child, always eager to learn. Of course, we thought he was smart, but as he grew, we realized that he was exceptional. A friend of mine said he was like a sponge, and teachers and parents of his friends would comment on how bright he was. Baker was a well-behaved child, although sometimes too talkative in school and a little too eager to answer all the teachers' questions in class before anyone else had a chance to. All the teachers enjoyed Baker, and I know many loved him. When Baker was in first grade, we visited his classroom, and it was on a parents' night. And we entered his room, and all the student desks were in the middle of the room, and we asked Baker, we didn't see his, and we asked him where his desk was, and he said, "Mommy, it's over here." And it was up against the wall by himself, by his teacher's desk. And the teacher said that she had to move him because she had to give him extra work to keep him busy. He would finish his assignment so quickly. She had to give him more work so he would not talk to the other students while they were trying to finish. Baker was he was very talkative, and that carried on through all his school years. I remember visiting when he was elementary school. I visited him, and he was so proud for me to be there, and of course he couldn't stop talking. The teacher was reading a book to the class while Baker sat closely by me. He was so proud that I was there. And while we were sitting there, he still talked and was pointing things out in the room while the teacher was reading her book. And I would remind him that he needed to stay quiet and listen as the teacher read, but he was just too excited. He didn't appear to be listening much to what the teacher was reading. He was just too happy I was there. It was clear to me that we had an exceptional child when the teacher began asking the class questions. Amazingly, up went Baker's little hand for every question, and he would proudly blurt out the correct answers. He was tested as a gifted child, and we were blessed to have such a bright child. Baker had such a sweet, caring personality. Even his peers knew that. He could be trusted. One little girl had an unfortunate accident, breaking her femur. And even though Baker was a good bit smaller than she was, he was the only boy she would trust to be careful enough to push her around in the wheelchair. He loved sports. He participated in baseball, swimming, and soccer from an early age. We did not allow him to play football until later because of his small size. Football seemed to be his favorite sport, even though he was an exceptional swimmer. He was plagued with joint and other injuries during his teenage years, which slowly ended his participation in competitive sports. He loved to play Xbox, wrestle with his dog Rocky, play Monopoly, card games, and he was the one to beat. He was really good at card games, and he would let you know it. Baker grew up to be such a handsome young man, very athletic, with more intelligence than he knew how to handle. He had such a compassionate heart that he easily felt the pain of others. As for God-given gifts, he seemed to have it all, but at times it seemed to be a burden for him. By all indications, it appeared that we were doing an okay job raising our kids. They seemed to be making good choices, doing very well in school, and still saying yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, but sometimes having to be reminded. We constantly received compliments on Baker's behavior and comments of what a good kid he was. Our neighbor actually came over and rang our doorbell just to tell us how impressed he was with Baker. He had observed him at swim team and commented on how respectful he was to the adults and how good he was with the younger kids. He also said he wanted to commend us on our parenting and admired us for the time we invested in our kids. We thought Baker was well ready for his young adult years and all it had to throw at him.
We did invest a lot of time in both Baker and Olivia. It was all the sports that he played, attending all the games, most of the practices. I was either a coach or help coach on every baseball team he was ever on, from 6 years old till he graduated high school. We believed it was important to show that we were always going to be involved in his life, and we would always be there when he needed us, and even if he didn't. So Baker was a good kid, and he had a good heart. And I know all parents say that, but I think we'd like you to hear some comments from friends, teachers, coaches that were posted on his Facebook page after he died.
These are also from letters that the best way we know how the best way for you to get to know our son is by hearing what others had to say about him. And I suppose we're wanting to stress that good kids can make bad choices. So I've just taken some parts of some of the many, many comments that were made to us about Baker, just to kind of help you get a feel of what he was like. Baker was one of the most genuine and selfless people I've ever met. I've always thought he saw something in everyone that not even we could see in ourselves. He was truly special and one of a kind. I like to think that Baker must have been really extra special to have fulfilled God's purpose in only 20 years. I always noticed how Baker had an unconditional love for people. While many judge others and hesitate before we show love, Baker never stopped to think about what a person looked like or had done badly in the past. But he treated all his friends and campers at camp, even total strangers he had just met, with a love that God wants us to love with. Baker could say something in one sentence that would take other people 10 minutes to say. And every time he said something, it made you think, because everything he said was so deep or thoughtful. My heart aches for you. I know you miss him, but he did leave quite a legacy. Folks were touched by his kindness and his genius. Thank you for raising an amazing son. I am forever blessed to say that I knew Baker and that he made the most positive impact on mine and others' lives. We will always remember your beautiful boy and how your dear, sweet, smart son grew up to touch so many people in such a loving way. He had that special gift even as far back as preschool. You are a good soul, Baker Mims. Baker was the most naturally intelligent person I've ever met. He did not hesitate to lend a hand and would never utter a word of complaint. The world needs more people like Baker. His generosity and kind nature is seldom in a world like this. His heart was so big. It has been a gift to me to be able to work with Baker at Winnetoska as his director. It breaks my heart that this wonderful young man with so much good in him is gone. It's amazing how many lives you have touched. Only the good die young. I'm honored that I had the privilege of knowing you. You will always be my good friend, and I will always love you, Baker. You were one of the influences that made me who I am. Baker always had a different way of looking at things. He saw the world and people in a light that most people never truly got to see. He taught me not to just accept things, but to examine and try to find what was real in this crazy world. Baker was not one to try to fit in. Baker did Baker. He never molded himself into what everyone else was, and that's one of the many reasons he was so special to me. He was someone I could count on, someone I can say changed my life for the better. Heaven got the most selfless, good-hearted person I had the honor to grow up with. You left one of the strongest and genuine impressions on me. You never said a bad word about anyone, and you were always great for a laugh. You will be remembered as one of my favorite encounters, someone that has caused how I viewed things to change. Only the good die young. You weren't good, you were great. The best guy I ever had the privilege of knowing. I'm going to miss how your personality and laughter could light up a room. You were so caring and had such a kind heart. You were smart and had such a wonderful potential, and I wish you could have seen all that I saw in you. You made such an impact on my life. I don't think there could have been a better person to go through hardships or the many great times with than Baker Mims. From football or track, you were a great friend and an amazing teammate. I cannot believe what I am hearing and seeing. You are such an amazing soul, and you have touched so many others. You always had a way to make everyone happy, even when they were going through the most depressing times in their life. I miss that infectious smile of yours. It always seemed to make everyone else smile when they were around you. You always knew what it took to make everyone that knew you feel special, and that is what I miss about you, Baker. We lost one of the most caring guys to ever grace the halls of Vestavia Hills High School. I'll never forget your huge heart, sense of humor, and beautiful spirit. Couldn't ask for a sweeter friend than you, Baker. Such a heartbreak. Someone with you with so much potential had to die before you figured out how great you could be. And this is my favorite. I wanted to tell you how wonderful of a person Baker was. I was so blessed to have the opportunity to get to be an aide with him for the special needs class our senior year. Your son had an incredible heart, Ms. Mims, and I wanted you to know how many people, myself included, noticed that about him and admired that about him. I will never forget when we went on a field trip with the special needs class. This one was the Valentine's Day dance, and how he was so sweet to dance with each one of those girls who thought he was the cutest thing. I could tell, as could everyone else in that room, how much he genuinely cared for those girls and was having such a ball dancing with them. It touched my heart that day, and I will always remember Baker's sweet heart and spirit. I just mainly wanted to tell you how great Baker is and how loved he was by so many. It was so cool because he was truly friends with everyone in every group in our grade, and not very many people at all. Really hardly anyone but Baker can say that. They were friends to so many and such a diverse group of people.
As Beverly mentioned earlier, Baker was fiercely independent. We figured that out early in his life when his first week at Camp Winnetasca, only time he'd been away from home ever. He spent a whole week, and the only note we got from him was, "I'm not missing y'all at all."
Well, and he said send water balloons.
But he loved Camp Winnetasca. He spent 13 years there, every summer. He went the same week because all the Vestavia kids went the same week. And it just happened that was the week of his birthday every year. So every year he spent his birthday at Camp Winnetasca. And he, eventually was a camp leader the last 3 years there. And I honestly can say there was no place on earth he would rather be. He just loved the kids there.
This was a trail after Baker passed. Several of his friends went out to Camp Winnetasca, and they made Baker's trail. And the first time we saw it, we went out on Baker's birthday, and we took balloons, and his friends were there, and we released balloons for his birthday. It was just, he loved Winnetasca, like Ronnie said, and the kids, the directors, everybody loved him. Baker was such a good kid in high school and was never a troublemaker, except he felt that homework was a waste of time. The summer before his senior year, he and his girlfriend broke up. He also found out he would not be able to play football because of a back injury. And I know even though the idea of college was exciting, I believe it also caused him stress. I think he also started going through a stage where he was trying to find himself and figure out where he fit in. He seemed to change some, be depressed at times, so we had him see a counselor to help him work through things. When the summer after his senior year rolled around, he was ready to go to college with the expectations of making all A's, and he was very excited to be on his own. I feel that my son was most likely self-medicated when he overdosed and died. I cannot help but try to figure out why. What did we miss? What could we have done differently? With him at college, it was so hard for us to know what all he was doing. We could no longer protect him like we could when he was young and at home. I would give anything to have had the chance to help him fight through it all. We never dreamed he would make the choice that he did. After all, I think you can see he was a good kid. Our kids are so fragile that the stress they have to deal with these days can leave them broken, overwhelmed, and feeling hopeless. Even though they can be extremely bright and very capable, they feel that they should be able to handle it themselves but can't. They don't want to appear weak by asking for help. Most of the time, they don't know how to ask. It is at this stage that they become so vulnerable and easily enticed by drugs and other evils of our society. I feel that in trying to stop this heroin and drug epidemic, we need to address why our kids choose to do drugs. Much of the time, it's because kids feel invincible and will do stupid things just for so-called fun. But for others, it can be much more, such as depression, stress, not fitting in, boredom, feeling different, or some other pain. Maybe a difference can be made by addressing these needs. One thing that helps me get through this and get through my days is that we see God using Baker still. God has taken what was meant for evil and is using it for good to help others.
I know Baker didn't mean this to happen. He wouldn't have wanted us to go through this, the pain, the sadness. He wouldn't wanted his sister to go through this. And I guess we get through it every day knowing that we will see him again. Baker was a Christian. And we know that we will see him again at some point. But there's so many questions that we deal with every day. We ask ourselves, what could we have done differently? What did we miss? And I'll be the first to admit we're naive about drugs. My just about every friend I knew in college smoked pot, but that was pretty much the extent. We didn't, and I guess there were probably signs we missed, but ours was different. Baker, there wasn't a slow process where we saw Baker decline. He looked the same. I saw Baker 2 days before he died. I went to Tuscaloosa because we were concerned about his schoolwork. And his roommate let me in, and I went upstairs to his room. He was in the shower, and he came out of the shower, and he just had a towel wrapped around him. So I saw him standing there with just that towel on, and he looked great. There were no signs. But it only takes one time. We've learned that the heroin purity, I guess, is as high as 90% in some cases, and that will kill a lot of people. And these kids don't understand. They don't understand how dangerous it is just to try that one time. But finally, I guess our hope is today that this will help change the stereotype that people have about drug users. And it's changing more and more every day. And we see kids, we see kids, Baker's friends that are falling in that same trap. And I want to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office for getting out in front of this and starting this summit. Especially want to thank Ms. Vance and Lyndon Lastard. Actually, the whole U.S. Attorney's Office has been so compassionate to us and so kind and understanding. And, we just hope this will make a difference. Thank you.
Our children are not defined by how they died. I want to make that perfectly clear. Nobody is defined by the way they die. They are defined by the way they lived. My daughter was one of the most independent, sounds familiar, headstrong, amazing human beings on the planet. And I know every parent feels that way, and every parent should. When she was about 8 years old, I needed to go out and buy a dress for the Emmy Awards. And so I took her with me. I needed a formal dress. And she had her crayons with her, and she sat with me in the dressing room, and I would try on a dress, and I'd, hey, what do you think about this? Nope. And we went through that about 6 or 7 times. Finally, I put on a dress that I thought was just perfect. And I turned around and I looked at her and I said, Madison, what do you think about this? And she glanced up from her coloring book and she looked at it for a second. And then she went back to her coloring. She goes, Mom, you got way more class in that dress. And she was right. She was very outspoken. And I thought, because she was a leader and not a follower, that would save her life. I'm not 100% sure how she got introduced to heroin. I never talked to her about heroin. I talked to her about marijuana. I talked to her about prescription drugs. I talked to her about alcohol. I talked to her about the birds and the bees. Heroin never entered my mind. That was something that I saw on Miami Vice. It was something I saw on TV. It was something from the movies. It was not something that you find in Alabama. But it's here. And any parent who doesn't believe that, and any parent who thinks it cannot come into your home, you're fooling yourself. It may be there already, and you just don't realize it. From what I understand, this was my daughter's second time to use heroin. And it was going to be the last. She didn't really like it that much. She didn't want to do it again. And it was the last time. It was the last time for a lot of things. And make no mistake, I blame no one but my daughter for this. She made the choice. But it is so hard to mourn your child and know that they are responsible for their own death. That's a very hard thing for a parent to go to sleep with at night. What she did not know is the purity of what she was doing. What she did not know, I firmly believe, were the dangers. I think she looked at this as just another high. Another couple of hours of feeling euphoria or whatever it was that she wanted to feel. I'll never know. They don't understand that first time may very well be their last time. And the only way they're going to understand it is if the parent understands it. And if we talk to them and we tell them what we know, and if we say it enough times, maybe at some point they'll quit rolling their eyes and, oh, Mom, you don't get it. I had no idea. And I know more about heroin now than I ever wanted to know. Since my daughter's death, several of her friends have asked me to sit with them while they told their parents that they needed help. And I've done it. One parent blew up at their child. How could you do this? How could you even go down this road? I thought I raised you better than that. It's not a question of them being bad kids. It's not a question of where they're raised. It's not any of that. They face so many choices outside our home, and they don't get the danger that comes with it. And I didn't get the danger that comes with it until that danger got my family. How she died is not indicative of how she lived. There are people in this room who knew my daughter from the time she was knee-high to a bullfrog. And they were just as stunned as me at how she died. I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of people, either in a setting like this, at the Foundry, in rehab groups. And every person I've ever spoken with has told me The first time they ever did it, they didn't realize what they were doing. And they didn't realize the journey that they were beginning to take. And if they had known, they wouldn't have done it. I think the people in this room are one of the first lines of defense for the Madisons and the Bakers and all the other children, all the other teens, all the other adults who are dealing with this. We're dealing with it too. And I've got to applaud this family right here for 15 months after the loss of their son to stand here and share their story. It's been 5 years for me. There's no way I could have done it at a year and a half. It's not possible. When I asked them how long it had been since their son died, immediately, 15 months. They could probably tell me the weeks, the days, and the hours. I lost my daughter in March of '09, March 6th. I can tell you everything that happened before that moment. I can't tell you the 48 or 72 hours after it. I know a lot of people were there for me. I know a lot of people reached out to me, and a lot of people held me up, and they prayed me into living. That's all there is to it. No parent should have to lose a child, ever. Our loss is not any greater than any other parent. It's our loss. And people told me I had to find a new normal. I'm still looking for it. Someone asked me not long ago, how do you get through every day? I don't know. I wake up every morning knowing that the pain will be with me. And I make room for it. And I accept it. And it might hit me driving down the road. It might hit me at work. It might hit me washing dishes. And I'll let it come. I can't fight it. It is now a part of my everyday life. It's there with me more than anyone else. And sometimes it is so overpowering, I can't breathe. And it didn't have to happen. Maybe if I had known more about heroin, I would have talked to her more about heroin. I can get caught up in a tornado of what ifs. Know about it. Talk to people about it. Get involved in fighting it. And I repeat, if you think it can't come in your front door, you're a fool. Because it can. Nobody is above this death. And that's all it is. It's a death. At some point or another, it's a death. Thank you so much for the work that you're starting in this room. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Because our children deserve your voice. Baker deserves your voice. Madison deserves your voice. Thank you.